Cotter sat on the step outside the prefab unit on the morning Lev's father told them they were leaving, and he did not move for 6 hours. He was 11 months old and still had the oversized paws of a dog that had not finished growing into itself. His coat was the pale gold of early grain, and his ears were too large for his head. He sat with his chin pointed at the middle distance, and his eyes tracking the mountain ridge to the northwest, as though something on that ridge required his attention. And when Lev came out and sat beside him on the step, Cotter leaned his whole weight against Lev's ribs without looking at him. Lev was 8 years old. He did not fully understand what his father had said inside, something about the survey contracts ending, about the resettlement authority, about the colony at Haveth Plateau being reclassified from provisional to dormant, which was a word that meant they were supposed to go. He understood the important part, that they were supposed to leave. He pressed his face into Cotter's neck. Cotter kept watching the ridge. They did not leave. Lev's father argued with the resettlement authority for 11 days, and on the 12th day, the provisional classification was extended by 2 standard years on the condition that the Saros family and the 4 other remaining households demonstrate measurable agricultural output within 18 months. The settlement coordinator, a Thurvian named Sethel Vorn who smelled faintly of something Lev could never identify and who wore the same gray field tunic every time Lev saw him, came to the unit to deliver the news in person. He found Lev's father at the kitchen table with the contract files and Cotter asleep under the table with his chin on Lev's feet. Sethel Vorn noted the dog in his field report. He wrote, Earth origin companion animal, golden retriever, present in dwelling during high-stress administrative negotiation. Animal calm throughout. Owner juvenile also calm. He did not think much of it at the time. The first winter on Haveth Plateau was colder than the survey data had projected by almost 11 degrees. The temperature monitors in the Saros fields failed on day 4 of the cold snap, and by day 7, the soil heating coils in the east section had burned through their couplings. Lev's father was in the fields before dawn every morning with a hand lamp and a repair kit, and a vocabulary Lev was not supposed to hear. His mother worked the equipment logs and the resettlement authority filing system from the kitchen table. Neither of them slept much. Lev helped where he could. He was 9 by then and had learned the field grid well enough to run the morning temperature checks and log the results before his father got up. He got up in the cold before light and pulled his boots on while Cotter waited at the door, already sitting, already patient, watching the door handle with the calm certainty of a dog who had decided that door opening was Lev's job, and he would wait as long as it took. The fields mostly survived. 3 rows of the winter crop died in the east section, which was 11% of projected output, and enough to put the provisional classification in danger again. Sethel Vorn came back in the spring to do the assessment. He found Lev in the east section on his hands and knees pulling dead root matter from the soil, systematic, working row by row. Cotter was moving alongside him, 1 row over, nosing at the soil in what appeared to be a parallel survey. Sethel Vorn watched this for a while. He could not determine whether the dog understood what the boy was doing or whether it was simply doing what the boy was doing because the boy was doing it. He could not determine which interpretation was less unsettling. He filed a second note. Earth companion animal continues to demonstrate situational mirroring behavior. Monitoring. Lev turned 12 this summer. The water filtration unit broke. The backup system had been flagged for replacement for months, and the parts were stuck in a supply chain dispute. The main unit went down in high summer when the colony's 6 remaining households shared the same reservoir line. Lev's father drove to the transit depot to argue in person about the parts and was gone 3 days. Lev's mother kept the water use to minimum rations and answered Lev's questions with the careful brevity of someone trying not to frighten anyone. On the second night, Lev sat on the roof of the prefab and watched the sky, the wrong stars, the 2 uncoordinated moons, the horizon darker than any horizon he had grown up with. He had been told the sky was beautiful. Sometimes he found it very far from anywhere. Cotter arrived through the roof hatch by whatever private method he had always used and sat down beside Lev, and put his chin on Lev's knee, and looked at the wrong stars with him. They sat there for a long time. The parts arrived on the fourth day. Vorn documented the incident in his quarterly report and noted that Lev Saros, age 12, had maintained calm household operations during the extended absence of both senior household members, assisted by the Earth companion animal. He filed it as a behavioral footnote and moved on. A Vethran field officer named Kreth Vaz read the report and flagged the footnote. Vorn responded that the observation was, in his professional estimation, relevant but difficult to classify. Kreth Vaz agreed. He filed a note, recommend continued monitoring. The second bad winter came when Lev was 13, and it was worse than the first. The temperature drop was 17 degrees below survey projection this time. 3 of the 6 remaining colony households evacuated in the first week. The resettlement authority sent an automated advisory recommending full provisional withdrawal, which was the official way of saying everyone should leave. Lev's father read the advisory, set it face down on the kitchen table, and went out to check the field coils. Lev's mother asked Lev that evening whether he wanted to go back. Lev was quiet for a moment. Cotter was lying with his back against the heating vent and his legs stretched out in the direction of Lev, and his head resting on the floor at an angle that indicated he was not asleep, but was not required to demonstrate alertness. Back where? Lev said. His mother looked at him for a moment. Good answer, she said. They stayed. The cold went on for 22 days. On the 18th day, Lev went out to check the east field boundary markers after a snowfall and did not come back on schedule. His mother went looking at the 90-minute mark and found him 300 meters past the east perimeter, sitting against a terrain marker post with his knees pulled up and his face pale and his jacket wet through. He had been on his way back when the orientation screen on his field tab had frozen, and the snowfall had reduced visibility to about 4 meters, and he had stopped moving because he had understood, with the clear-headed calm that comes just before cold gets dangerous, that he did not know which direction the unit was. He had been sitting there for 40 minutes. He was sitting there when Cotter arrived. Lev did not know how Cotter had gotten out of the unit. He had not been paying close attention to the door when he left. What he knew was that Cotter came out of the snow at a steady trot, not panicked, not fast, the way Cotter moved when he had decided on a direction and was executing it. He pushed his nose against Lev's face once, hard enough that Lev's head moved, and then turned and looked back the way he had come. Lev got up and followed him. Cotter led him back to the unit in 12 minutes, moving at a pace Lev could match, stopping twice when Lev's footing slipped on hidden ice, waiting both times without being told to. The unit door was open. Cotter had come through the dog panel on the exterior airlock, which Lev had not known Cotter could open, which Cotter had apparently been able to open for some time and had simply not required. Vorn filed the incident in his winter monitoring report, requested the full behavioral log from the unit's environmental sensors, and read it twice. Then he called Kreth Vaz. The retrieval was initiated without a command, Vorn said. The animal assessed the delay, operated the exterior airlock independently, navigated the field in low visibility conditions, and paced its return movement to the juvenile's current physical capacity. Kreth Vaz was quiet for a moment. How old is the animal? 4 standard years. The juvenile is 13. They have been together since the juvenile was 8. Kreth Vaz said, send me the full record. Lev was 16 when the provisional classification expired for the last time. The resettlement authority sent the final advisory in early spring, when the plateau was just coming out of the winter mud, and the east field was showing the first green of the new planting season. The advisory was longer than the previous ones, and used language that did not leave much room for argument. The provisional extension period had been exhausted. The remaining colony households, 3 now, down from 6, would need to make a formal application for full settlement classification, or accept resettlement assistance within 90 days. Full settlement classification required a minimum sustained agricultural output review, infrastructure certification, and a community viability assessment. The assessment team arrived 6 weeks later. 2 human surveyors from the Regional Development Authority, 1 Thurvian administrative liaison, and 1 Vethran field officer. The Vethran field officer was Kreth Vaz. He had requested the assignment. Lev met the team at the colony's main access point, which was a flat area of packed earth where the supply track met the plateau road. He was tall by then, with the kind of lean that comes from 6 years of physical work in outdoor conditions, and the kind of quiet that comes from the same 6 years of considerable uncertainty. He shook hands with the surveyors and nodded to the Thurvian liaison. When he got to Kreth Vaz, the Vethran officer looked at him for a moment with the particular attention of someone matching a record to a face. Cotter was sitting at Lev's left, as he always sat. He was 5 years old now, fully grown, with the deep chest and the steady, unhurried eyes of a working retriever in his prime. His coat had darkened from the pale gold of his puppy months to a richer color, the color of late summer wheat when the light catches it sideways. He looked at Kreth Vaz without alarm and without particular interest, the look of an animal that has assessed a situation and found it unremarkable. Kreth Vaz crouched down on one knee in front of him. This was not something he had planned. He found himself doing it anyway. Cotter led him. "The door," Kreth Vaz said, "not to Lev, to the dog." Cotter looked at him, the steady, unhurried eyes. Kreth Vaz stood up. "We will begin the agricultural review this afternoon," he said to Lev. Lev said, "Yes, sir." The assessment took 4 days. Lev walked the surveyors through every section of the fields, answered every question with the kind of precision that came from 6 years of watching his parents do the same thing and learning what mattered. The east section that had died in the first winter was the most productive section now, which Lev's father said was because of how thoroughly they had turned the soil after the loss, and which the surveyors noted in their data with the careful blankness of people who are noting something they find unexpectedly impressive. Kreth Vaz spent most of the assessment watching Lev and Cotter. He watched the way the dog moved through the fields alongside the boy, not underfoot, not ranging, but at a consistent left-side distance, adjusting without instruction when Lev turned or stopped or crouched to show the surveyors a soil sample. He watched Cotter sit outside the equipment shed with the patient attention of a sentry, not tense, not alert in the threat response sense, but present in the way of an animal that has decided its job is to be there, and has been executing that job for years. On the 3rd evening, Lev sat on the prefab step with the assessment paperwork on his knee, and Cotter lay his chin on Lev's boot with the slow, complete ease of an animal that had done this 10,000 times. On the 4th day, Kreth Vaz filed his portion of the assessment. In the community viability section, he wrote, "The Saros household demonstrates sustained operational continuity across 6 years of adverse provisional conditions, including 2 severe cold events, infrastructure failures, and progressive population loss from the settlement. Household junior member Lev Saros, currently 16, has been a primary contributor to agricultural monitoring and field operations since age 9. In the behavioral notes addendum, he wrote, Earth origin companion animal, golden retriever, male, 5 years, present throughout the full period of provisional settlement. Behavioral record documents, continuous situational monitoring across multiple crisis events, autonomous welfare retrieval, cold event, year 5 of residency, Environmental operation independent of command airlock, same event. Consistent proximity and orientation maintenance relative to juvenile owner across all documented field activities. He paused. He wrote, classification recommendation, sustained companion, provisional settlement grade, Haveth Plateau, a category that does not currently exist in the field taxonomy. He sent the addendum to the Regional Behavioral Records Office with a note attached that said, it should. The full settlement classification was approved 41 days later. Lev was standing in the east field when the confirmation arrived on his tab, the same east field where the crop had died in the first winter, where he had pulled dead root matter from the ground at 9 years old with Cotter working the row beside him. He read the notification twice. Then he sat down on the cold ground because his legs felt uncertain, and Cotter sat down next to him and leaned his full weight against Lev's ribs, the same way he had leaned on the step outside the prefab 8 years ago, when Lev had been 8 and Cotter had been 11 months old with oversized paws and the entire plateau ahead of them. The field was quiet. The 2 moons would not be visible for another few hours. The sky in the late afternoon was a color Lev had stopped comparing to Earth skies because it had become its own thing, the Haveth sky, the sky he knew. He put his face into Cotter's neck. Cotter kept watching the ridge. Some things did not require words. Some things had been decided a long time ago, on a step outside a prefab unit, when a dog sat down beside a boy and stayed. The Behavioral Records Office approved Kreth Vaz's new category 3 weeks after the settlement classification came through. The entry read, Sustained Companion, Provisional Settlement Grade. Qualifying criteria, continuous co-residency through adverse provisional conditions, documented autonomous welfare intervention, sustained behavioral orientation toward primary juvenile owner across multi-year period. And then, in the notes field, in Kreth Vaz's own handwriting on the submitted form, the category did not exist. The animal had been doing the job for years before anyone had a name for it.